The storm raged over the ancient castle, and shadows twisted along the stone walls. King Aldric sat alone on his throne, his eyes cold as marble, his heart cursed to stone. A violent gust of wind flung open the great doors, and the echo thundered like a war drum. Sir Cedric whispered, "The curse deepens, my liege." But Aldric said nothing, his silence heavy with doom. Lightning slashed across the sky, illuminating tapestries of bloodied conquests. A hidden voice seeped through the darkness, hissing, "The throne will fall with your heart." The king's hand clenched around his iron scepter, yet no warmth stirred in his chest. The air grew heavy, as if the walls themselves mourned. In that chilling silence, a bell tolled in the distance, marking the kingdom's slow descent into despair. In the forest beyond the castle, the wind howled through twisted branches like the cries of the dead. Lady Elara pressed forward, her lantern trembling in her hand. She whispered, "I should not be here," yet her steps betrayed her words. The path narrowed, lined with roots coiled like serpents. A sudden shriek tore from her lips as the ground gave way beneath her, revealing a hollow chasm. Shadows reached for her, as though the forest itself was alive. The lantern light flickered, catching glimpses of eyes glowing faintly among the trees. The cursed woods whispered promises of despair, and her scream carried through the storm toward the cursed king's throne. Within the castle's forgotten halls, Prince Rowan pressed his ear to a cracked wall, where the wind whispered secrets. His breath quickened as words crawled into his mind. The king's heart is not his own. Rowan staggered back, clutching his chest. He muttered, "What curse is this?" His torch flared, shadows spiraling around him like spirits. The stone groaned, as though the walls remembered centuries of betrayal. With dread clawing at him, he realized he had uncovered a truth too dangerous to speak aloud, a secret meant only for the darkness. In the great hall, silence shattered as a blood-stained sword slipped from trembling hands and clattered across marble. Gasps filled the chamber as nobles recoiled. Sir Cedric said, "My king, treachery is among us." The king's gaze burned colder than the storm outside. His silence spoke louder than rage, chilling every soul. The sword lay between them like a prophecy of doom, its crimson edge gleaming beneath the torchlight. From the cathedral tower, the bell's toll echoed across the storm-lashed kingdom, each strike heavy with omen. The villagers clutched one another, whispering prayers no god would hear. A child cried, "The curse is upon us." Mothers hushed their little ones, though their own eyes trembled with fear. The sound rolled like thunder, announcing not salvation, but ruin. Within the castle, King Aldric heard the toll, and allowed himself the faintest smile, a cruel acknowledgement of fate. Beneath the storm's fury, Prince Rowan lingered alone in the royal crypts, staring at the tomb of his mother. His voice trembled as he whispered, "You bore the burden of his cruelty yet still loved him." The inscription carved into the stone spoke of sacrifice, though the silence mocked him. His hand pressed to the cold surface, and the curse weighed on his chest as if the tomb itself crushed him. He muttered, "Am I bound to repeat his sins?" A whisper drifted through the cavernous dark, "Not his own. The bloodline carries the curse." Rowan staggered back, chest heaving, his heart burning with dread and resolve. At dawn, Sir Cedric knelt in the courtyard, his battered armor glinting faintly in the first light. His voice carried firm devotion. "I swear my life to defend you, my prince." Rowan stood above him, torn between fear and gratitude. The storm had passed, but its remnants lingered in the chill air. Rowan said, "If I fall, you must not follow me into the abyss." Cedric's scarred face hardened, and he replied, "Your fall would be the end of us all." Around them, the castle walls loomed, scarred from countless wars. The oath hung heavier than the silence of the dawn. In the garden cloaked with ivy, Lady Selene appeared, her emerald gown shimmering faintly in the morning dew. She smiled, but her eyes carried secrets. "Rowan," she said softly, "not all who stand beside you wish you well." Rowan narrowed his eyes. "Why speak in riddles?" She stepped closer, her hand brushing the stone railing, voice low. Some seek the crown, not your heart. Her warning lingered like poisoned honey, sweet yet dangerous. Rowan's chest tightened and he whispered, "Who betrays me?" Selene only offered a knowing smile, leaving her words to coil within him like smoke. Beneath the flicker of oil lamps in the library, Master Edrin laid an ancient scroll before Rowan. His voice was measured, heavy with centuries of lore. The curse was born of blood, and only blood can end it. Rowan stared at the runes, their meanings twisting like fire in his mind. "Whose blood?" he asked, his voice breaking. Edrin's eyes darkened, his hand trembling as he replied, "The cursed king's, or yours." Silence thundered between them, the weight of fate pressing like iron chains. Rowan's breath faltered, his future written in ink and doom. On the balcony above the storm-swept valley, Lady Elara stood with Rowan, her cloak whipping in the wind. Her voice carried the weight of longing. "I walk beside you, though the world forbids it." Rowan turned to her, eyes softening. "If you stay, you may lose everything." Her lips quivered, but she answered, "What I lose is nothing compared to losing you." The valley below roared with rivers swollen from rain, yet in that moment, silence enveloped them. Their hands brushed together, trembling with forbidden hope, hearts bound, though fate sought to sever them. The royal court gathered beneath banners heavy with rain, and whispers crawled like spiders along the marble. Sir Cedric said, "Someone forged the seal," and the nobles recoiled as if stung. Lady Selene said, "Proof would spare us fear," yet her gaze slid from Rowan's eyes. King Aldric rose, and the torches seemed to shrink from his shadow. He said, "Lies feed on cowards," and the hall trembled under his voice. Rowan felt the whisper from the walls return like frost in his lungs. He said, "If the seal is false, our treaties are ash." The steward stumbled forward, hands ink-stained and shaking. The forged decree fluttered open like a trapped crow, and the court held its breath. Beyond the walls, smoke smeared the sky as riders fled a village broken by shadow. A child wailed, and the sound pierced Rowan's thoughts like iron. Sir Cedric said, "Wraiths strike at dawn, guided by a traitor's hand." Elara gripped the parapet, knuckles white, and said, "Then we move before the sun betrays us." The wind tasted of ash and river silt, and the fields rippled with fleeing crows. Rowan said, "We will not let fear rule the gates." Yet fear already ruled the roads, wearing a face made of storm and hunger. The bell had warned them, and now the warning walked. In the council chamber, King Aldric's temper cracked like thunder over stone. He slammed the scepter, and dust leapt from ancient maps. He said, "Mercy breeds rot," and the courtiers bowed to hide their fear. Rowan stepped forward and said, "Mercy breeds loyalty, and loyalty stands when iron fails." Aldric's eyes held nothing but the echo of winter. He said, "Loyalty bends to power, not pleas." The words carved a canyon between them that no bridge could cross. Selene watched, lips curved, secrets veiled beneath silken poise. The chamber smelled of wax and storm, and the hour darkened. Night folded the castle in silver, and Rowan faced his reflection in a moonlit window. He said, "If blood ends the curse, whose blood buys dawn?" The wind pressed at the panes like a pleading hand. Elara entered softly and said, "Do not pay what you cannot reclaim." He almost smiled, and the smile hurt. He said, "I fear I was born to be the blade that breaks us." She touched his sleeve, and the quiet grew brave. She said, "Be the hand that steadies it instead." The moon crowned the floor with pale armor, and his heart steadied once. At the ruined chapel beyond the gardens, a figure stepped from the incense of old moss and rain. The voice was low and ancient. The guardian said, "The curse binds stone to throne, and love to loss." Rowan said, "Name the path, and I will walk it." The figure lifted a palm, and sigils stirred in the air like sleeping stars. The guardian said, "Seek the heart well under the mountain, and beware the friend who smiles." Elara drew closer and said, "What price waits there?" The answer fell like ash. The guardian said, A heart for a kingdom, or a kingdom for a heart? In the cloistered gallery, Rowan found Selene standing too near the council scrolls. She turned quickly, her smile sharp as glass. She said, "I guard what others might misuse." His eyes narrowed. "Or you hide what you already misused." The silence stretched, heavy with suspicion. Cedric's footsteps echoed down the hall, and Selene whispered, "Not all betrayals wear crowns." Rowan's chest ached, for the warning cut both ways. He thought, her loyalty is a mask, but whose mask is worse, hers or my father's? The air was tight with secrets, and the torches hissed in restless smoke. On the ramparts, Elara's voice faltered against the roaring wind. She said, "Our bond is a fire that cannot be fed, not while the curse binds him." Rowan caught her hand, his own trembling. He said, "Fire dies if smothered." Her eyes burned bright with pain and longing. "If I stand with you, I betray my house. If I leave, I betray my heart." The valley below seethed with storm-swollen rivers. Rowan whispered, "Then, let betrayal choose me, not you." The wind tore at their cloaks, but their silence afterward was louder than thunder. In the training yard, Cedric bore the weight of laughter as younger knights mocked his scars. One sneered, "The king's dog growls, but cannot bite." Cedric's jaw tightened, but he did not strike. Rowan stepped between them, his voice steel. "This man's loyalty holds the kingdom firmer than your swords." Silence dropped, and the young men withdrew with smirks fading. Cedric said, "They see an old warhound." Rowan replied, "I see the shield I need." Cedric's shoulders sagged, but pride flickered in his scarred eyes. Loyalty was heavier than armor, but it endured. In the tower library, Edrin unfurled a faded scroll with shaking hands. He said, "I should have spoken sooner." Rowan leaned forward. "What truth have you hidden?" The old man's voice cracked. "Your mother sought to break the curse with her blood, and it devoured her." Rowan staggered back, grief cutting sharper than steel. Edrin's eyes glistened. "I thought to spare you the weight, but silence is its own sin." Rowan whispered, "Her sacrifice is the wound I carry." The lamp sputtered, shadows crawling like guilt across ancient stone. The throne room grew darker as Aldric ascended the dais, his crown casting jagged shadows. He said, "The kingdom bends or it breaks." Nobles knelt, though fear choked their breath. Rowan watched, fists trembling, as Selene's gaze flickered toward him like a silent signal. Aldric's voice cracked like iron striking stone. "Mercy feeds rebellion. Power feeds order." The torches guttered, and the hall seemed to shrink beneath his wrath. A hush settled, heavy and suffocating. In that moment, Rowan knew the kingdom was held not by loyalty, but by fear sharpened into a blade. In the moonlit crypt, Rowan's breath echoed against cold stone as he traced the runes carved into the wall. His torchlight flickered, revealing his mother's crest hidden beneath moss. He whispered, "She bore more than blood." The sigil blazed faintly, and the truth unfolded in the silence. A voice whispered through the stone, "Your heart beats not alone." Rowan stumbled back, realization striking like a blade. His mother's sacrifice had bound his life to the curse. He pressed his forehead to the stone, muttering, "I am the heir not only to the throne, but to the wound that created it." In the council chamber, Selene's mask cracked. She held the forged decree aloft, her smile poisoned. "You sought a traitor, my prince," she said, "and you found me." Rowan's heart clenched as Cedric drew steel. Selene's eyes flashed. "I pledged myself to a kingdom, not to you. The crown belongs to those willing to bleed for it." Her voice was silk wrapped in venom. Rowan whispered, "You wore loyalty as armor." She replied coldly, "And you wore hope as chains." The hall erupted, loyalty fracturing like shattered glass. By the sacred pool beneath the castle, Edrin's voice shook as he revealed the truth. The curse was wrought by Aldric himself, he confessed. Rowan gasped, the water shimmering with reflected firelight. He carved his heart into stone to silence grief. Edrin continued, but he chained his bloodline to despair. Rowan staggered, the weight crushing him. So the curse is no witch's spell, it is his will? The silence screamed the answer. Rowan clenched his fists. Then I must face not magic, but the monster who birthed it. The pool's reflection showed not a prince, but a condemned heir. Within the chapel ruins, Elara's voice trembled as the truth unraveled. Your father did not only curse himself, he cursed your blood. Rowan turned sharply, his chest aching. How do you know this? Her tears glistened. Because my house carried the burden of watching. My family swore silence. Rowan's face fell, betrayal and sorrow colliding. You knew and still stood beside me? Elara whispered. Because love does not wait for truth to be kind. Rowan's hand trembled as it touched hers, yet the gulf between them yawned wider than ever. The bell tolled again, echoing through castle and valley alike. Villagers muttered, the savior is cursed. Nobles whispered, the heir brings ruin. Rowan stood alone in the rain-swept courtyard, their voices stabbing like knives. He whispered, if I am both heir and doom, then I must choose which I become. Lightning tore the sky as his reflection shivered in a pool of rain at his feet. The truth was laid bare. His destiny was no salvation freely given. It was a choice carved in pain. His jaw set, and silence answered louder than the storm. The throne room burned with torchlight as Rowan faced Aldric. Rain thundered beyond the stained glass, lightning splitting the sky. Aldric said, you stand before me as a boy, not a king. Rowan's hand shook, but his voice did not. I stand as blood of the wound you carved. Silence pressed down like iron chains. Cedric drew closer, sword raised, but Aldric's glare froze him in place. The obsidian throne seemed to pulse with the weight of centuries, and the scepter trembled in Aldric's grip. Rowan whispered, the curse ends tonight, with your heart or mine. In the antechamber beyond, Edrin staggered against the stone, clutching a bloodied scroll. Go, he rasped to Rowan as he entered. Rowan caught him, whispering, you should not have come. Edrin pressed the scroll into his hands. Prophecy burns brighter than flesh. His eyes dimmed, but his voice steadied. Your path lies through sacrifice. Rowan shook his head, tears cutting through the soot on his face. Edrin exhaled one last word, live. Then silence fell, heavy and final. Rowan's fingers trembled as the scroll's ink smudged beneath the weight of a dying mentor's trust. On the rain-swept balcony, Elara seized Rowan's arm. Her voice broke as she said, if you walk through that door, you may never return. Rowan searched her eyes, finding both fire and despair. He said, if I stay, the kingdom falls. Tears blurred her vision, but she pressed closer. Then let me fall with you. He cupped her face, his thumb trembling against her cheek. You are the hope I was denied, he whispered. The storm tore through their silence, and still they stood locked together, bound by a love sharper than any curse. The courtyard roared with chaos, as Cedric stood against wraiths spilling from the gates. Steel clashed, and sparks burst like falling stars. Cedric cried, for the prince. His scarred face burned with defiance as shadowed claws raked across his armor. The younger knights faltered, but Cedric's roar carried them forward. He swung with the strength of memory, each strike carving back the dark tide. The air reeked of smoke and blood, yet his spirit burned brighter than torches. Alone he was a wall. Together they became a storm. Rowan heard his name echo through the clash, heavy with loyalty. The clash reached its peak in the throne room. Aldric raised the scepter, shadows writhing like serpents at his feet. Rowan cried, your heart is stone, but mine still bleeds. Lightning split the stained glass, shards raining down like jeweled tears. Aldric roared, compassion is weakness. Rowan lunged, their clash shaking the chamber as power cracked the floor. Elara's scream echoed from the balcony, and Cedric's roar thundered from below. The kingdom's fate teetered on the edge of steel and blood. The curse's end, for love or ruin, hung on a single heartbeat. The throne room lay shattered, its stained glass broken and torches guttering in the storm's draft. Rowan knelt beside Aldric, whose scepter lay broken at his side. The king's breaths were ragged, his eyes dulled of fury. Aldric whispered, "I carved my heart from grief and cursed you with the emptiness I bore." Rowan's hands trembled as he said, "You were a king with no heart, and I am a son with too much." Aldric exhaled one last, shuddering breath, and silence claimed the whole. The curse pulsed once, then faltered, leaving the chamber heavy with finality. In the valley below, villagers gathered as the storm broke, rain fading into dawn. Mothers clutched their children, watching the castle where lightning no longer raged. A farmer whispered, "The curse has ended." Another muttered, "Or it has only begun." Their voices trembled between hope and fear. The bell no longer tolled, and silence spread across the land. Yet in that silence, a fragile calm stirred, like the first breath after drowning. The people turned their eyes to the broken tower, waiting to see if light would return to the kingdom's heart. Rowan stood in the ruined chapel where prophecy was first spoken. He whispered, "Her sacrifice is the wound that shaped me, but not the chain that binds me." His reflection in the cracked altar showed a boy hardened into something more. Elara stepped beside him, her hand brushing his. She said, "You are not the curse, you are its breaking." Cedric entered, weary and bloodied, his armor dented but his spirit unbowed. He said, "The kingdom waits for its heart." Rowan's chest ached, but he lifted his chin, realizing the throne no longer defined him. It waited to be redefined. In the council chamber, whispers returned like ghosts. Nobles said, "The heir is cursed still," while others murmured, "He carries hope." Rowan entered, shoulders squared, eyes heavy but unyielding. He said, "The curse does not end with blood, but with choice. I will rule with the heart my father cast aside." Silence spread like ripples, and even the most skeptical bowed their heads. Yet in the shadows beyond the chamber door, Selene's gaze lingered, a faint smile curling her lips. She whispered to herself, "A crown is never safe, not even in hope." Night fell, the storm long gone, and Rowan stood on the castle balcony. The stars broke through for the first time in years, silver against velvet black. Elara joined him, her cloak brushing his. "The kingdom breathes again," she whispered. Rowan's eyes lifted skyward, a faint smile ghosting his lips. "The curse is ended, but its shadow will always remind us what was lost." In the distance, a wolf howled, and silence followed. The stars shone brighter, unflinching, and the night held a promise the kingdom had long forgotten, that even in ruin, hope could rise.